Time. Capsule, comparing 1970s streets to the modern cityscape. Do you think you know New York City? The bright lights of Times Square, the towering skyscrapers, the yellow taxis, the endless crowds. Millions of people visit New York every year believing they're seeing the city at its best. But what if I told you that just 50 years ago, many of these same streets looked almost unrecognizable? What if I showed you a New York where Times Square wasn't filled with giant digital billboards, where graffiti-covered subway trains rolled through dark tunnels, where abandoned buildings stood beside family-owned shops, where neighborhoods that are now worth millions of dollars were once places many tourists avoided? Today, we're opening a real-time capsule. Using rare footage from the 1970s and 1980s, we're going to compare the streets of old New York with the incredible city you see today. Some places have changed so dramatically that you may not believe they're the same location. Others have quietly preserved their character, hiding fascinating stories in plain sight. But one neighborhood experienced a transformation so unbelievable that historians still debate whether it was one of the greatest urban success stories in modern history, or whether something priceless was lost forever. We'll reveal that later. First, let's travel back to a completely different New York. Imagine stepping onto the streets in 1975. There are no smartphones, no ride-sharing apps, no social media influencers taking selfies. The sounds are different, the smells are different, even the pace of life feels different. Taxi horns echo through crowded intersections, steam rises from underground pipes, newspapers fill the street corners, street vendors shout to attract customers, musicians perform on subway platforms hoping for spare change. Every block tells a story. Every neighborhood has its own personality. This wasn't the polished New York featured in today's travel brochures. It was rough around the edges, sometimes chaotic, sometimes unpredictable, yet incredibly authentic. Many longtime New Yorkers still remember this era with deep affection. Others remember it very differently. Crime rates during parts of the 1970s were significantly higher than they are today. Some neighborhoods struggled with poverty, abandoned buildings, and declining public services. The city even faced a severe financial crisis that brought New York dangerously close to bankruptcy. For visitors, this meant New York could be both exciting and intimidating. You never quite knew what you would discover around the next corner, and that's exactly what made the city unforgettable. P2. Now let's visit one of the most famous places on Earth, Times Square. Today, millions of visitors stand here every year taking photographs beneath enormous digital billboards that light up the sky 24 hours a day. Street performers entertain crowds, Broadway theaters welcome audiences from around the world. Restaurants stay open late into the night. The energy feels almost endless. For many travelers, this is the New York they have always dreamed of seeing. But the Times Square of the 1970s tells a very different story. As the vintage footage begins to play, look carefully. The buildings are familiar, but almost everything else has changed. Instead of colorful digital screens, you'll see traditional painted advertisements and simple illuminated signs. Instead of large tourist crowds, you'll notice local commuters moving quickly through the streets. Many storefronts look worn. Some buildings show years of neglect. Several movie theaters that once attracted families had become adult entertainment venues. Crime and public safety were major concerns during this period. Many visitors avoided Times Square after dark. It's difficult to imagine today because the modern square feels completely different. So, what happened? How did one of America's most troubled neighborhoods become one of its biggest tourist attractions? The answer wasn't simple. It took decades of investment, redevelopment, stricter law enforcement, new businesses, and countless people working to transform the area. The changes didn't happen overnight. They happened one building, one business, and one street at a time. Today, Times Square welcomes more than 50 million visitors every year. It has become one of the world's most recognizable public spaces. If you're planning to visit, timing can completely change your experience. Many first-time visitors arrive during the middle of the afternoon. That is also when the crowds are usually at their largest. If you want better photographs with fewer people, try arriving shortly after sunrise. The early morning light creates beautiful reflections on the buildings, and you'll have much more space to enjoy the surroundings. If your goal is to experience the famous neon lights, return after sunset. The entire square transforms into a glowing display of color. Tip is to explore the side streets instead of staying only in the center of Times Square. Just a few blocks away, you'll often discover smaller restaurants, local cafes, and quieter places to relax. Many travelers spend hours standing in one location without realizing that some of New York's hidden gems are only a short walk away. Here's something else many visitors don't notice. Even though the buildings have changed dramatically, a few historic theaters have survived through every generation. They silently watch New York evolve from the difficult years of the 1970s into the global city we see today. Those theaters remind us that history doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it simply adapts. As you compare the old footage with today's skyline, ask yourself one question. Did New York become better, or did it simply become different? There isn't one correct answer. Some people miss the old character and individuality of vintage Times Square. Others celebrate the cleaner streets, improved safety, and vibrant atmosphere that millions enjoy today. Perhaps both perspectives are true. One thing is certain. Standing in Times Square today is like standing on top of decades of history. Every building has witnessed countless stories. Every street corner has seen generations come and go. And our next destination may surprise you even more. It's a neighborhood that transformed from abandoned factories into one of the trendiest places in the world, where artists, designers, and travelers now gather every day. The story behind that transformation is even more remarkable than Times Square, and most visitors have no idea what stood there just 50 years ago. P3. Our next stop takes us to one of the most dramatic transformations in New York City. Welcome to Soho. Today, Soho is known for luxury boutiques, designer stores, stylish cafes, expensive apartments, and visitors carrying shopping bags from famous brands. The sidewalks are filled with photographers, artists, fashion lovers, and travelers from every corner of the world. The neighborhood feels elegant, creative, and full of life. But if we travel back to the 1970s, the picture changes completely. The old footage reveals rows of aging industrial buildings. Many factories had already closed. Large warehouses stood nearly empty. Several streets looked quiet compared to the busy destination they are today. At first glance, it would have been difficult to imagine that this area would one day become one of Manhattan's most desirable neighborhoods. Then something unexpected happened. Artists began moving into the abandoned factory buildings because the large open spaces were affordable and perfect for painting, sculpture, photography, and creative work. These former industrial lofts slowly became homes, studios, and galleries. As more artists arrived, the neighborhood developed a completely different identity. Small art exhibitions attracted visitors, local cafes opened their doors, creative businesses followed. Eventually, developers recognized the area's potential. Investment increased. Historic buildings were restored instead of demolished. Luxury brands arrived. Property values climbed dramatically. Today, some of those same buildings that once struggled to find tenants are worth millions of dollars. This remarkable transformation is one of the most famous examples of urban renewal in the world. Yet many people still wonder whether something important disappeared along the way. As neighborhoods become wealthier, longtime residents and local artists sometimes find it difficult to afford rising rents. The very creativity that made Soho attractive also contributed to its changing identity. It raises an interesting question. Can a neighborhood keep its original soul while continuing to grow? Every visitor forms a different opinion. If you're planning to explore Soho today, walking is the best way to experience it. The streets are relatively compact, making it easy to discover hidden details that many tourists miss. Take time to look upward instead of focusing only on the storefronts. You'll notice beautiful cast-iron architecture decorating many of the buildings. Soho contains one of the largest collections of cast-iron buildings anywhere in the world. These historic structures survived decades of change and remain one of the neighborhood's greatest treasures. Early morning is one of the best times to visit. The streets are quieter. Natural sunlight creates beautiful reflections on the historic buildings. Photographers often arrive shortly after sunrise to capture the peaceful atmosphere before shopping crowds begin to fill the sidewalks. If shopping isn't your priority, simply enjoy wandering through the smaller side streets. Many independent art galleries continue to operate alongside international luxury brands. Some display remarkable contemporary artwork free of charge. One of the greatest pleasures of traveling is slowing down enough to notice small details. The texture of old brick walls, decorative fire escapes, historic street lamps, the sound of musicians performing on nearby corners. These moments often become stronger memories than famous landmarks. As we leave Soho behind, another fascinating neighborhood waits just a short distance away. Greenwich Village has managed to preserve much of its historic charm while the city around it continued to evolve. Its tree-lined streets, small cafes, jazz clubs, and historic townhouses tell a story that is very different from the towering skyscrapers of Midtown. The comparison between vintage Greenwich Village and the modern neighborhood may be the most emotional chapter of our entire journey, because some places there look almost exactly as they did half a century ago, proving that not every part of New York chose to change. P4. Now let's leave the busy shopping districts behind and step into one of New York City's most beloved neighborhoods. Greenwich Village. The moment you arrive, everything feels different. The towering skyscrapers begin to disappear. The streets become narrower. Trees line the sidewalks. Historic brownstone homes stand quietly beside cozy cafes and bookstores. It almost feels like you've entered a small town hidden inside one of the world's largest cities. When we compare footage from the 1970s with what you'll see today, something remarkable becomes clear. Unlike Times Square or Soho, Greenwich Village hasn't completely reinvented itself. Instead, it has carefully protected much of its original character. Many of the same buildings remain standing. Several small parks still welcome visitors. The famous tree-lined streets continue to create a peaceful atmosphere that has attracted artists, writers, musicians, and filmmakers for generations. This neighborhood has always been a place where creativity flourished. Some of the world's most influential musicians performed here long before they became famous. Writers found inspiration inside quiet coffee shops. Artists gathered in small studios to exchange ideas that would eventually influence culture around the world. Walking through Greenwich Village today feels like walking through living history. The architecture tells stories that no history book can fully capture. Every doorway, every brick wall, every narrow street has witnessed decades of change while somehow preserving its identity. If you're visiting New York, don't rush through this neighborhood. Slow down. Leave the busiest avenues behind. Walk without looking at a map every few minutes. Some of the best discoveries happen when you simply allow yourself to explore. You may find a hidden jazz club tucked beneath an old building. You might discover a family-owned bakery that has served local residents for decades. A quiet courtyard may suddenly appear between historic buildings. These unexpected moments often become the highlights of any trip. Many travelers focus only on New York's famous landmarks. They spend hours waiting in long lines for popular attractions. Meanwhile, neighborhoods like Greenwich Village quietly offer experiences that feel much more personal. This is where you begin to understand how local people experience the city every day. Now let's head underground. The New York subway has always been one of the city's most recognizable symbols. The vintage footage from the 1970s reveals trains completely covered in colorful graffiti. Some subway cars looked like moving works of art. Others reflected the challenges New York stations often appeared darker. Maintenance was more difficult. Many passengers felt less secure than they do today. Over the following decades, enormous investments transformed the subway system. Today, millions of passengers depend on it every single day. Although delays still happen and navigating the network may seem confusing at first, the subway remains one of the fastest and most affordable ways to explore the city. For first-time visitors, purchasing a transit pass can save both time and money. Using public transportation also allows you to experience New York the way many local residents do. Instead of sitting in traffic inside a taxi, you become part of the city's daily rhythm. You hear different languages spoken all around you. Street musicians sometimes perform on station platforms. Commuters hurry to work while tourists study subway maps. Every ride becomes another small adventure. One important travel tip is to avoid carrying large backpacks on crowded trains during busy rush hours. Keep your valuables secure, stay aware of your surroundings. Most subway journeys are completely routine, but practicing basic travel awareness helps make every trip more comfortable. As we continue comparing old footage with today's New York, one surprising pattern begins to appear. The city's greatest transformation isn't just about buildings, it's about people. The neighborhoods have evolved, the businesses have changed, the streets have been rebuilt. Yet the incredible energy that made New York famous decades ago still exists. It simply expresses itself in new ways. Our final journey will bring everything together. We'll visit Central Park, Brooklyn, and some of the city's most breathtaking viewpoints before answering the question we've been asking since the beginning. Has New York truly changed beyond recognition, or has its heart remained exactly the same all along? P5. As our journey through New York comes to an end, one question still remains. Has New York City completely changed, or has it simply evolved with time? After comparing the streets of the 1970s and 1980s with today's modern skyline, the answer may surprise you. The buildings are taller, the neighborhoods are cleaner, the parks are more inviting. Technology has transformed the way people live, work, and travel. Millions of visitors now arrive from every corner of the world, bringing new cultures, languages, and traditions that continue to shape the city's identity. Yet beneath all these changes, something remarkable has remained exactly the same. New York has always been a city of dreams. Every generation has arrived here searching for opportunity. Artists came hoping to create something unforgettable. Musicians arrived with nothing more than talent and determination. Immigrants crossed oceans believing they could build a better future. Entrepreneurs risked everything to open businesses that would eventually become world famous. That spirit still exists today. You can still feel it while walking through Central Park on a peaceful morning. You can hear it in the music played by performers inside subway stations. You can see it in the small family-owned restaurants that have served local communities for decades. You can experience it while watching the sunset from the Brooklyn Bridge as thousands of people pause to admire one of the world's most recognizable skylines. If you're planning your first visit to New York, don't limit yourself to the famous landmarks. Visit Times Square, but also explore the quieter streets nearby. Walk through Central Park, but continue into the surrounding neighborhoods. Take the ferry across the water and admire the skyline from a completely different perspective. Spend time inside local cafes, visit neighborhood markets, explore museums, historic buildings, and waterfront parks. Some of the city's greatest experiences are completely free. Watching the sunrise over the East River, listening to live music in a neighborhood park, walking across the Brooklyn Bridge, riding the Staten Island Ferry for spectacular views of the Statue of Liberty in Lower Manhattan. These simple experiences often become the memories people treasure most. Another important travel tip is to wear comfortable walking shoes. New York is one of the world's best cities to explore on foot. Many visitors underestimate how much walking they will do each day. Comfortable shoes, a reusable water bottle, and a fully charged phone can make your day much more enjoyable. If possible, visit during spring or autumn. The weather is usually pleasant. The parks are beautiful. Walking becomes far more comfortable than during the heat of summer or the freezing temperatures of winter. As you compare the old footage with today's city, remember that every photograph captures only a single moment in time. Cities never stop changing. Buildings are restored. Businesses open and close. Neighborhoods continue to evolve. 50 years from now, future generations may compare today's New York with a completely different city once again. That is what makes great cities so fascinating. They are living stories that continue to grow with every passing year. History isn't locked inside museums. It surrounds us every time we walk through streets that millions of people have walked before us. The vintage footage you've seen today is much more than old film. It is a reminder that every ordinary moment eventually becomes history. The people crossing the street in 1975 probably never imagined that millions would one day watch those same moments decades later. Today's visitors are creating tomorrow's history without even realizing it. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson New York teaches us. Every generation leaves its own mark. Every neighborhood tells a different story. Every traveler experiences the city in a unique way. No two visits are ever exactly the same. Thank you for joining this journey through New York's past and present. If you enjoyed traveling through time with us, please support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and turning on notifications so you never miss another adventure. Tell us in the comments which New York location surprised you the most. Would you rather experience the New York of the 1970s or the modern city we know today? Your answer might be very different from someone else's, and that's what makes this conversation so interesting. Until our next journey, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember that every destination has a story waiting to be discovered.
Thanks for watching. Like, comments, and share.